Good morning. My name is Taryn, and thank you so much for stopping by my channel, Nicole Flower House. 1 year ago, I set out to build an amazing raised bed cut flower garden so I could learn how to create sustainable floral designs using my own homegrown flowers. This week, I'm starting out in my tomato rows. It's time to clean them out because the plants are overcome with insects and are no longer producing healthy fruit. Tomato season is officially over for me here. Now, you may be wondering what my tomatoes have to do with cut flowers. Well, this past season, I realized I had too much food and not enough flowers. Growing my own food became my first gardening passion that I toiled and labored at. However, it was kind of just a means to an end. Local and homegrown food is so full of life. Though I very much enjoyed plants, nature, and having a garden, I turned growing food into a mission that included processing and preserving. I was dabbling in the world of food self-sufficiency, all while continuing to work a full-time career. While this was a noble cause, certainly worth working for, there was one huge thorn in my side. I absolutely hate the work of processing and preserving food. The abundance of produce coming in was more than I cared to handle. I resented the hours I was spending in the kitchen, cleaning, chopping, peeling, cooking, blanching, freezing, dehydrating, packaging, and storing away food. I was doing a lot of things I felt morally obligated to do. I wanted to be a responsible citizen and make a contribution. I watched too many documentaries on how terrible humans are and how we are all just trashing our planet. But as I realized how miserable I was, I began to feel very empty and bored. Honestly, I didn't want to struggle with it anymore. I was burned out. I'm not saying I didn't want to work hard or put in effort, but I didn't want to despise the steps it took to participate in these ideals. At this point, I decided to grow food for fresh, seasonal eating instead of large volumes for food preserving. I also had to let go of the false conception that if I didn't strive for growing 100% of my food, that I wasn't doing enough. Growing any amount of your own food is a noble endeavor, whether it's a simple herb garden or something a lot more substantial. This brings me back to my tomatoes. I'll still grow a few plants, but there is no need for me to have this many next season. Over the winter, after the frost comes, I'm going to turn all 6 of these tomato rows into a dahlia patch. In last week's video, I started this project by moving some of the dahlia boxes from the back of the property to the front, where it will be much closer to the rest of the garden boxes and my rainwater collection system. I left the dahlia plants in place, just hoping to keep the tubers alive and healthy, so I can move them to their new spot over the winter. As I have shown in previous videos, I never got around to staking these plants up. Right now, these poor babies are lying all over the ground and not producing at their best. When I rebuild the new dahlia boxes this winter, I'm going to use PVC hoops and wire fencing to create a support system for next year's crop. It will be in place before the dahlia tubers are dug up and moved. Now here are some of the flowers that I've been harvesting all week. I made several simple arrangements just to scatter around the house. I don't use floral foam or any type of structural support for these. I'm hoping to experiment using willow branches to achieve the same effect as chicken wire to improve the way these arrangements turn out. Now I want to talk about my dahlias a little bit more while you watch me arrange these. I live in zone 7B, which is right on the borderline concerning whether dahlias will survive the winter. In previous years, I dug up all my tubers and tried storing them. I had some success, but it took a lot of time and I still lost plenty of tubers to rot. Last winter, when I dug up my dahlias, I accidentally missed quite a bit of them, and they sprouted back up this spring. I was surprised at how many survived. This year, I'm going to do an experiment, and instead of storing the dahlias, I'm going to let them stay outside, planted in the garden boxes. I want to know just how many come back. There is a chance that if we have a very cold winter and the soil in the boxes completely freeze solid, I will lose all of them. However, I still want to see what happens with this approach because digging and storing dahlias is a huge task and one that is not fun or exciting for me. So if I can get out of doing it, I will. The dahlias that were in the ground over the winter grew much taller and bloomed way earlier than the ones I planted from fresh tubers in the spring. And as a backup plan, I'm going to take cuttings this fall to see if I can propagate some of my current stock. This week, I planted seeds for a fall cutting garden. This is my first year trying to do this, so we'll have to see how it turns out. All of the varieties I planted can tolerate light frost, so hopefully I can get some blooms before the winter really sets in. I planted sweet peas, calendula, stock, dara, Queen Anne's lace, carnations, snapdragons, and bachelor's buttons. By the end of the week, Hurricane Sally also brought over 4 inches of rain to our area, which was just a few days after the seeds went in, so I'm hoping for quick germination. The arugula and radishes I planted in the vegetable bed have already come up. I did direct sow everything since I did not take time to start seeds indoors. If the direct sowing fails, I'll probably try to start seedlings inside next year. also sowed a patch of poppies right in the front. This will give them a head start for early spring blooms. I've struggled quite a bit this year with deer, and poppies are supposed to be deer resistant, so that's why they got this prime spot up here in the front corner. I've seen from Joe Lample of Growing a Greener World that deer can be confused by garden boxes if they are configured in a maze-type pattern. And I did notice this summer that they mostly ate things around the perimeter of the garden and didn't really venture into the center. So I'm saving the center boxes for my ranunculus and tulips, since that is something that deer really like to eat. And last year I had them covered up with frost cloth and the deer didn't bother them, so I'll do that again. I'm also planting some sunflowers that have a seed to harvest time of 55 days. We may get frost before then, but if we don't, it will be worth it to have some late sunflowers. I took a similar risk with some basil and cucumber seeds to see if I could squeeze in a harvest of those as well. Here I am taking out some celosia plants. They did amazing for me this year, and I really loved how abundant they were. The reason I didn't cut these and take them inside is that they've already gone to seed, and that would make a huge mess as they dropped inside. I'll probably have hundreds of volunteers in this area next spring, and I'll have to stay on top of pulling those out. That is all for today's garden update. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and the best way you can support my channel is to subscribe and share it with your flower-loving friends. Thank you so much for taking interest in my flower garden, and I'll see you next week. Bye.